1997, I met a biographer called Teresa Ransom, who was working on a biography of Fanny or Frances Trollope, mother to Anthony Trollope, and herself a very prolific and very fascinating writer. Teresa told me she thought that Fanny Trollope's novels were better than Anthony Trollope's novels. I can't say I agree, but I have very much enjoyed reading some of her books, and I think her life is a really intriguing one, so it's worth finding out more about this interesting woman, born in 1779, so really a contemporary of Jane Austen's, but she lived well into the Victorian era, into 1863. Now, Fanny Trollope got off to a start as a writer when she travelled to America. She was married to a lawyer who suffered from terrible depression. The bills were unpaid. She decided to go and join a sort of commune place in America. She also ended up running a shop there selling exotic goods, but all of these things proved to be a failure. What she then did, however, was extremely successful. She wrote a book called Domestic Manners of the Americans. She's quite critical of the Americans. She shows that they chew tobacco and spit, that the spit can quite frequently ruin ladies' drawing room carpets or even land on the skirts of their dresses. She criticises their table manners as well. But the timing of the book was really good because the English were still feeling rather sore that America had ditched them in the American War of Independence, and they loved reading things that were critical about the Americans. And of course, the Americans all wanted to see what this English woman had said about them, so they all rushed out to buy the book as well. And Domestic Manners of the Americans proved to be a bestseller. This made Fanny Trollope realise that she could make money writing novels. Tragically, she lost 3 of her children to tuberculosis. But she got up early every morning, she wrote novels in order to pay the bills, and she set a wonderful example to her son Anthony, who of course was also a very prolific writer. Fanny ended up writing the very first industrial novel. It's called Michael Armstrong, the Factory Boy. I don't think it's one of her best, but she was certainly a trendsetter in writing a novel that was set in a factory. She also wrote a book about slavery, and this was a book that was much read by Harriet Beecher Stowe and influenced her writing of Uncle Tom's Cabin. Now, my 2 favourites of her books are her novel The Widow Barnaby, which was hugely successful. The widow is not grieving for her dead husband. She wants another husband who's got plenty of money. She sets out to travel to Bath and Bristol and other places, hoping that she will persuade a man to marry her. She's not a particularly worthy character, but you can have a lot of fun with The Widow Barnaby. Fanny Trollope also wrote a sequel, but I don't think the sequel is nearly as good as the first book. And then my other favourite of her books is one called The Vicar of Wrexhill. The vicar is a very slimy evangelical vicar. And I think that when Anthony Trollope was creating his very marvellously funny character, Mr. Slope, another oily clergyman, he drew on his mother's portrayal of a clergyman in The Vicar of Wrexhill. So a fascinating book with a very unpleasant main character, but an excellent plot and very well written indeed. So Fanny Trollope produced travel books. She wrote about 40 books altogether. That includes 35 novels. She was extremely prolific. She finally went to live with her eldest son Tom in Italy, where she established a house called the Villino Trollope, and there she was visited by many of the great writers of her day. So it was a long life, it was a productive life, and while I don't think that she outclassed her son as a novelist, I think there are many excellent reasons for reading the novels of Fanny Trollope.